Wells Fargo, the biggest U.S. home lender, reported that bad loans jumped in the second quarter, with the recession making it harder for borrowers to keep up with payments. Our Margaret Popper joins us now for more with Wells Fargo's CFO, Howard Atkins.
Howard, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
I got to jump on the bad news in this, of course, because your shares are down even though the earnings were up, and that's because of the non-performing assets that Matt was just talking about. Is this the last jump of this size that we're going to see?
Well, let's put that in perspective. Our credit expenses for the quarter were $5 billion. Our revenue in the quarter was $10 billion, nearly double the credit costs. I don't think there's any other bank in the country that has that positive relationship. So let's keep that in perspective. You mentioned that our credit loans, the problem loans, were up in the quarter. That's true. I did see your earlier scorecard where you showed our percentage increase relative to some of the other big banks. That's a bit of a misleading comparison because we're starting from a very low base. We actually have much fewer problem loans than most of the other big banks, so we're starting from a low base, and mathematically you'd get some increase just from that.
So that's
the
where
reason
that,
we start from such.
That's where
Sure.
that 45% leap came from then.
Yeah, if you remember, we wrote off all of Wachovia's non-accruing loans at the close of that transaction at the end of December. So we basically wiped the slate clean with non-accruing loans, and now, of course, as we're getting new loans into that portfolio, new non-accruing loans, we're starting from zero, and it kind of looks like it's a large increase, but in fact, it's only because we're starting from zero.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. In your press release, you said 60% of the rise came from Wachovia assets that were not considered impaired at the time of the merger, because those you could have written down. So what are these assets, and how are they going to perform in the future?
Well, again, these are the lower risk assets in the portfolio. As you may know, in any portfolio, even a very good portfolio, there's always a certain amount of new problems coming in, but also a certain amount of new problems going out. And the distinction this quarter is that even as new problems came in, there was nothing to go out this quarter because we started with zero. Okay. So until we actually get some more problems coming in, we may still see a little bit of an increase, but that should moderate in the third quarter.
All right, and then I want to talk about TARP because obviously you were trying to hit your stress test goals here under SCAP. You did. You raised $14 billion in capital through this. Does this mean you can pay back TARP?
Well, that's one requirement. We've hit 14.2 against the 13.7 buffer that was required by the Fed. We actually expect in the third quarter additional internally generated capital to come through on top of the 14.2. The SCAP test, of course, is not really over until the end of the third quarter, so we kind of have to wait for that. But as I said, we expect additional internal capital to come through.
So do you have enough? I'm sorry. Do you have enough to pay back TARP?
Well, that remains to be seen. You know, what we're trying to do is grow the company, grow earnings in the company. We think that's the best way of increasing our capital ratios is to do what we've done now, to just earn it. And with record profits back-to-back quarters, if we can continue strong profitability, our capital ratios are going to go up, and that will make it even easier to repay TARP at some point.
And just very quickly, is Uncle Sam going to let you pay back TARP?
That's their call. I think there's the interests are aligned to repay this. You know, when we got the TARP capital in October of last year, that was designed to enable the banks, including us, to lend out the money. We've now extended almost $500 billion of credit in this period, 10 times the amount of, I should say 20 times the amount of TARP that we got. So that's mission accomplished.
All right, Howard, I'm going to have to jump in here and say thank you very much to Howard Atkins. He is the CFO of Wells Fargo.